Okay, this afternoon we want to come to the third major topic in our thinking about Plato, God and the cosmos. And the transition comes very naturally from his theory of forms. You might take note of this additional way in which he speaks of the overall arrangement of things in the total universe of being. He distinguishes between being, becoming, and non-being. Where, of course, becoming is the state of change. Characteristic, therefore, of the world of particulars, this physical natural world. Being is the realm of the unchanging, the eternal, the realm, therefore, of forms. And non-being is what? It is total privation of form. It is nothing in particular. Playing on this, there is nothing in non-being which is in world of particulars. It's nothing in particular. And so it's nothing. And the question is, how do particulars come to be? You see. And we'll notice there's some ambiguity in Plato's thinking. Plato does not himself anticipate the later Christian doctrine that creation is ex nihilo, out of nothing, out of non-being. No, that's not Plato. Whatever God Plato may be trying to conceptualize is not a God who is creator ex nihilo, as the Judeo-Christian God is. Plato's God is more of a shaper, an organizer. You see. But if non-being, then, is not conceived of as absolutely nothing in the ex nihilo sense, what is it that is nothing in particular? You see. Well, the thing is the particular thing it is, by participating in the forms, so that it participates in the nature of something, some quality, some kind of entity, species, some kind of relationship. It has to participate in the nature of something in order to be something in particular. So if it is form that gives particularity, what you have here is a realm of non-being, that is the privation of all form, that is conceived of as some sort of primal matter. Primal matter. It's not at all clear what Plato might mean by that. Does he mean that there are certain material elements that are, and always were, you see? And out of that primal blob, particulars of certain kinds and so forth are literally formed, informed. Well, that's the sort of picture that we have. It's rather vague. We'll look at the materials and see what sort of shape it takes. But the question of God arises by virtue of giving attention to the realm of being. Because so far, Plato has conceived that there is a vast collection of forms. You see, a form of this kind of thing, a form of that kind of thing, a form of the other kind of thing, umpteen forms. These forms are all real. They have being. You see. They transcend this world of particular things, the transcendent realm, another realm of being. They're separate from this realm. They seem to be separate from each other. They're ideals, representing what is the ideal good for that kind of thing that the form represents. So the question arises, what's the relationship between all these forms? If you're going to have a cosmos, a universe, rather than a multiverse, there must be relationships of some sort between the various forms. Something that unifies them, in which they all, as it were, participate. You see. There must be, in other words, a form of all the forms, a form of formness, an ideal of idealness. And since to be a form is to be good, an ideal, Plato conceives of a form of the good. Not a form of a good this, a good that, a good the other, particular kinds of forms, as it were, but a form of formness, a form of idealness, a form of the good. And it's that notion which he develops in the Republic, the idea of a form of the good, that starts his gradually developing conception of one transcendent, supreme kind of being, that pushes his thinking in the direction of, well, what some people have called a kind of theism. There's a book on Plato by a Cambridge philosopher, A.E. Taylor, and it said of that book that he makes Plato into a good Episcopalian. Maybe overstating it. But Plato's groping for this conception of a supreme, transcendent good being is plainly groping in the direction of some sort of a good God. You see. Now, take a look at the handout I just circulated, and if there are spares, make sure they come back to me. And the segment at the top left from the Republic, section 509, that standard numbering of the pages in the Republic. And he's just introducing this conception of the good. This reality, he says, that gives their truth to the objects of knowledge. What are the objects of knowledge? Forms. Okay. What gives their truth, their reality as objects of knowledge, to those objects of knowledge? and gives the power of knowing to the knower, makes it possible for us to know the forms. Well, what makes this possible, you must say, is the idea of the good. Sure. What makes it possible for the prisoner in Plato's cave to see not just the shadows on the wall, but to see real things in the light that comes through the mouth of the cave? What is it? The sun. And in the cave analogy, he pictures the prisoner released, going out into the daylight and climbing the hill to get a vision of the sun, the source of light, that makes it possible for us to know, to see, with the eye of the mind, the forms. So that which gives truth to the objects of knowledge, the power of knowing to the knower, is the form of the good, the idea of the good. And you must conceive it as being the cause of knowledge and of truth, insofar as known. Yet, there as they both are, knowledge and truth. In supposing it to be something fairer still than these, you will think rightly. It's more than just the source of knowledge, truth. But as for knowledge and truth, even as in our illustration, it's right to deem light and vision sun-like, like the source of all, you see, but never to think that they are the sun, the source of all. So here it's right to consider these two, knowledge and truth, as being like the good, the form of the good, body form. But to think that either of them is the good is not right. Still higher honour belongs to the possession and the habit of the good. And then the interjector says, an inconceivable beauty you speak of. If it's the source of knowledge and truth and yet surpasses them in beauty, what is it in itself, you see? And a little further down, the sun, I presume you'll say, not only furnishes the visibles the power of visibility, but also provides for their generation and growth and nurture, though it's not itself generation. Well, in like manner, then, you're to say that the objects of knowledge not only receive the presence of the good, receive from the presence of the good their being known, but their very existence and essence, or nature, is derived to them from it. Though the good is not essence, it transcends essence in dignity and surpassing power. So the good is the source of knowledge, the source of the existence of forms, the source of the nature, the various natures of things, forms, you see. Now when he says source, does he mean the originator, in the sense of source as beginning, or source as that on which everything is constantly dependent? Well, I think it's clear he means the latter, that they have their being by being in relationship to the form of good. If he means it literally, that the various forms of themselves, eternal, and the question of origin doesn't arise. Well, he gets back to that sort of thing later on. Okay, now in the Parmenides, I've written these names of the various dialogues so that you can catch them. In the Parmenides, which you recall from our discussion of the segment in the text last week, the Parmenides, which talks about the one as distinct from the many, okay, the good becomes, of course, the one, whereas the world of particulars, the world of change, represent the many. There is one form of the good. This is the one. Incidentally, Platonism appealed not only to early Christianity, but to Judaism as well. And if you want to get the point of connection, remember the famous Shema in the book of Deuteronomy. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. What? The one. It's good. See the connection? Well, in the Phaedrus, which you're outlining for this week, recall, he speaks of beauty itself, as distinct from particular beauties. The one, the good, goodness itself, beauty itself, in which beautiful things participate. Well, taking it from that point, his later writings push in two directions. At least on the surface they seem like two directions, though in reality they're one. The first is in the direction of cosmology. The second is in the direction of moral order. Oh, there we go again. The cue from the pre-Socratics. By virtue of the one, which is the good, the form of all formness, there is order to the cosmos, rational order, what Heraclitus called logos structure. But by virtue of the fact that the form of formness is the good is to be imitated. We are to be like the good. You get a notion of moral order as well as cosmic order. The macrocosm, the cosmos. The microcosm, the city-state, and the individual moral life. And the source of order in both is the good, the form of the good. Well, that begins to emerge in relationship, on the surface it seems, to cosmology, in the Timaeus. And you have some selection from the Timaeus we'll look at in a little while, where in the Timaeus he speaks of an artificer and the world soul. I made a mistake there, I wrote down the laws, okay, that should have been the Timaeus. In the Timaeus, he speaks of an artificer and the world soul. And talk of the world soul recurs in the laws, the Philebus, and the Sophist, in shorter span than in the Timaeus. Now, what is this artificer? Well, an artificer is etymologically one who makes art, one who works. The Greek term is demiurgos, and that's a workman. A workman. So here you have a picture of a cosmic workman, cosmic artificer. And of this artificer, Plato says, being good, he desired that all things would be good, and so made them according to forms. Oh. Now, it's difficult to know how literally to take this. Because it's a passage where Plato seems to leave aside his method of having Socrates engage people in dialogue and pulling it all out in conversation. Instead, Plato makes a speech and tells what he calls a likely story, as if the capacity for clear conceptualization and literal statement is, as it were, running into all sorts of mist and cloud and conceptual barriers. And so it could be that the way in which he personifies this demiurge is not to be taken literally, as if this is a personal deity. It's hard to say. But at least he finds the language of personal deity the best for saying what he wants, however literally he wants it. But notice that the demiurge, the artificer, is good. As if to say, now the good that we've spoken about in the Republic is what I have in mind here. The artificer, the good, is not simply an ideal, transcendent ideal to be admired. It was, after all, to be the source for the being of the forms. Why shouldn't it also be the source for the becoming of the cosmos? Becoming. The source for the being of the cosmos. And so he says, being good, he desired all things to be good. And so he made them according to forms. As if the ideas, the plan, was the antithesis. It makes him sound more like an architect than an actual workman. The Greeks had a rather Aristotelian view of things, aristocratic view of things. So that being actually a workman and doing the work with your hands was below the dignity of the aristocrat. But to conceive of it and plan it, that's another matter. So he seems to think of the artificer as a planner, as an architect, who assigns to the world soul. World, soul? Yeah, he seems to think of the cosmos as an animate thing, like a living creature. He uses that very phrase. Body and soul. In fact, that notion is as old as the pre-Socratics and before. Did you notice the line when you were reading Thales? Remember Thales? The world is besouled and full of divinities. Besouled? The world has soul? It's full of them? Yeah, because the concept of soul, the Greek word psyche, is very ambiguous. It's used for life, as is the Latin anima, used for both soul and life. You see? And so the Greeks thought that animals have souls. And if you weren't particularly good in this life, you might become an animal in the next one. For those who held transmigration. You see? But here he's speaking of divinities, gods. Likening the soul to gods, or is it that the word God simply means some immaterial powers? Some beings that are not simply flesh and bones the way we are. Gods. Well, in any case, what he has is a world soul. As if the cosmos is a living thing. Plato never heard of Newton's mechanistic universe. A thing so dead. You see. The universe for the Greeks was not dead, it's alive. With its own powers, its own vitality. That's why the 19th century Romanticists in Berlin went back and studied Plato. Because they saw nature was alive, too. But this world soul, then, is the active power that shapes the cosmos in accordance with the forms. And the artificer gives it to the world soul that pervades all things and enlivens things and activates things that do so in accordance with the forms. Just as your soul should enliven and move your body to act in accordance with the good, the forms. So the world soul, that the whole cosmos, should be ordered according to the good, cosmic order. Well, in the further comments that he makes on this in the Philebus and the Sophist laws, that there seems to be some connection between soul and reason. Just as there is in the individual human soul. The rational soul is what orders life. So with the world soul, it's as if it is the rational orderer. You see. And you're going back to Heraclitus Logos, echoing that concept. Anaxagoras nous. In fact, it's in this sort of the context that in the Philebus, he applauds Anaxagoras for thinking in terms of that cosmic reason, the nous, even though Anaxagoras didn't go far enough. You see. Well,